Hello again. Welcome into ESPN FC Live here on YouTube alongside Shaka Hislop and Mark Ogden. I'm Dalen. Great to be with you guys. We've got a great show today. We're going to start with transfers because we are just about over a week away from the window opening. So we've gotten some transfers with a focus on a Premier League piece of that. We will go through the Champions League draw. Augie just posted an article on ESPN.com. We'll see if he doubles down or just, goes on one on each side. We'll find out shortly. And Man City is in the Club World Cup final against Fluminense. We'll talk about if there are any concerns as it relates to the Premier League and with this competition in the middle of everything else, how that can affect them. They are still the favorite to win the Premier League by ESPN Bet, but they are plus money for the first time all year. So that is interesting. You can get more than just your money back. They're plus 120 currently. All right, let's start with the transfers, though, guys. And Shaka, I'll go to you first. Kalvin Phillips has been a topic of conversation for quite some time for City. He's only played 393 minutes, Premier League minutes, since coming over 2 summers ago. He had a great Euro 2020 at the time, which was summer of 2021, and just hasn't found a home at City. Do you see him leaving on this window? Will it ever work for him and Pep?
I think so. It won't work for him and Pep. I think Kalvin Phillips has to go. Before his move to Manchester City, he was one of the most coveted defensive midfielders, certainly in English football, which prompted the move to Manchester City. Now, I don't know what's happening behind the scenes there, but I am as surprised as anyone that he got absolutely no playing time or relatively no playing time. I still think that there's an opportunity for him to move, that there will be any number of Premier League clubs who are in need of defensive midfielder will be willing to give Kalvin Phillips a shot. The one thing he hasn't done is kind of caused any trouble, said anything untoward, shows that he continues to be a team player. And I think once you do that, you give yourself the opportunity of other clubs being interested and giving you that next chance to revive your career.
He came over for £45 million, Augie. And if he goes back into the market here in January, what is a price point, and what are some clubs that are looking for his services?
Yeah, I think nobody's going to sign him for a transfer fee. I don't think in January. I think the most likely option is a loan. I think because he'll be on decent wages. He'll be on. I think he's on at least £150,000 a week, which is probably way beyond most clubs outside the big six. I think maybe a club like West Ham, who obviously, let Declan Rice go to Arsenal and some of that. They're a club that's had a long-standing interest in Kalvin Phillips, but they would struggle to pay those wages. So that is a problem. I think Newcastle have always been keen, but again, would Man City, in the situation they're in right now, where I won't say they're struggling for the title, but they're certainly not, top of the league, would they allow him to go to a rival for the top 4, top 6? So Kalvin Phillips is almost kind of stuck where he is because the only clubs that can afford him or would want him are the clubs that would be Man City's direct rivals, and that makes it really difficult for City to sanction his departure. City might say, look, we're Man City, we believe in ourselves, we'll back ourselves to beat anybody in our day. And they might say, we're happy with him going to Newcastle or to West Ham or even to Liverpool. But I don't know, I just think, with it being such a tight title race this season, I think they might just be reluctant to do that to help somebody along the way. I mean, it's such a tight race that Man City might end up fighting for top 4. And if that's the case, they don't want to let him go to Newcastle. So it's a difficult one for Kalvin Phillips.
Yeah, difficult for all parties involved, including Gareth Southgate. I mean, you got Euro 2024 in the summer, and he's an integral part of the Three Lions squad. So that'll be interesting to see. One of the big storylines as we head into the January window. Augie, I'm going to go back to you with Jadon Sancho. I feel like this is, over the last 4 months, it hots up and it cools down. And as United's performances tank, obviously the focus becomes more on that and less on Sancho and some of the drama there. Give us what's going on. Anything new to this story in terms of their relationship, where he's training, what's going on with Sancho and United?
No, I mean, it's just kind of permafrost. That's the relationship with him and Ten Hag. He's not playing with the first team. He's basically kept apart from the first team, so he doesn't have any involvement with the first team. Now, I suspect it's gone a bit too far now for Sancho to apologise. He's clearly not of the mind to apologise for. It was pretty much an overreaction, really. I mean, Ten Hag said that he didn't make the trip to Arsenal back in September because of his training performances that week. It wasn't the biggest criticism in the world. It was maybe mildly critical, but it wasn't. I don't think it deserved this kind of 4-month standoff between the two guys. But that's where we're at. And, two very stubborn men. Clearly, Ten Hag isn't going to back down. If Ten Hag backs down, that's his authority over a difficult dressing room gone. And if Sancho backs down, it's a matter of pride for him. So I think the obvious thing is that in January, United will try and find a club to take him on. But United's position is difficult. Their chief operating officer, Colette Roach, came out earlier this week and said that their transfer incomings in January will be restricted by the fact that they're struggling with FFP restrictions, so they need to bring money in. So they basically just told all their rivals that we haven't got any money, so please give us a lot of money for Jadon Sancho. Well, nobody's going to do that. Jadon Sancho's value has gone right through the floor. He was a £70 million player less than 3 years ago. I mean, nobody's going to pay £20 million for him now because his valuation has tanked. Nobody's, United are desperate. They want to get rid of him. So I think clubs are aware of that, and I think it's going to get to the point where any interested club, and there won't be many because of his situation, will wait till the very last days of the window and try and lowball United. And that is a danger, because why would anyone take Jadon Sancho right now? He's not played for 3 or 4 months. His attitude is clearly an issue because it's been an issue with previous clubs and with England. His fitness will be nowhere near where it should be. And on the field, even when he has been fit, he's not played well for United for 2 years. So he's not a player that people are going to be banging the door down on the 1st of January trying to sign. So if United need to raise some cash to sign some players, Jadon Sancho is not going to bring a lot of money in.
Shaka, how do you view him as an asset? We've seen him play well in years past at Dortmund. You see why he was a coveted asset. He's still very young, but all those issues that Augie just listed are evident. I mean, how do you view him as a player and as an asset? If he was coming into a locker room, how would you receive him if he gets transferred out?
Well, if he's coming to a locker room that I'm a part of, where you take that for what it is. I think players just kind of deal with comings and goings as part of the business and don't give that too much mind. Outside of that, I'm in terms of an asset, I'm not sure that I see Jadon Sancho as much of an asset anymore. Linked with a return to the Bundesliga, and that for me is the only likely destination where he had success. He had some good performances with Borussia Dortmund, but ever since he arrived at Manchester United, you cannot say the same. He's been given opportunities, but just hasn't taken them. And to that point, kind of contrasting Jadon Sancho with Kalvin Phillips or even Van der Beek at Manchester United, they have kept themselves in a better position in terms of a transfer by not playing and not kind of kicking up a stink off the field as Jadon Sancho has. So it's been this weird kind of dynamic around Sancho, because he's been given opportunities, not taking them, and then he's fallen out with the manager, which if you're on the outside looking in, you're a little bit tentative of. Added to that, as well, saying that all 3 players, the kind of salaries that they would be commanding, I'm not sure that anybody's willing to pick up that tab, given the lack of production over the last few seasons since they've been at their respective clubs.
I feel like you see it in all different sports. If a player, you're willing to deal with the headache if the player produces at a very high level, and those things are not they're not running in the same direction right now. So just real quick, Augie, if Ten Hag is no longer there though in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, which seems you never know. They're trying to figure out the management situation and the road director of football. There's all those other questions. If for some reason it became untenable and let him go, does Sancho ever have a home again at United?
I'd say yes. I mean, and the situation Ten Hag, I think you're right. I think it does kind of go from in crisis to on the brink of crisis. And they got a decent result at Anfield at the weekend, but West Ham away, Villa at home the next 2 games. They could lose both of those games and you're straight back into crisis. And if you get a new regime in charge of football with the Jim Ratcliffe situation, then they might decide that they need to make a change. And if, as Shaka will tell you, managers are very pragmatic people. They just want to get results. They want to win. And they might have the ego to think, well, I can deal with Jadon Sancho. And ultimately, if they get him right, he's a very good player. Big if they get him right. But, a new manager comes in, he'll want to show he can make a difference. So I think from day one, he'd say to Sancho, right, you've behaved a little bit, off mark, but I'm going to give you a chance. So I think, and maybe that's Sancho's strategy, to ride it out until Ten Hag goes. And I do think that if Ten Hag was to go, and I don't think he will, but if he did, I think Sancho's back in the squad.
There's a lot of variables here. Let's just say that. Let's move on to Reiss Nelson, a guy at Arsenal that was a very young, talented, a coveted piece, but he stayed at Arsenal and has had different loan spells and had success. But he's yet to really break into consistent first team reps, if you will, within that team competing for a championship in the Premier League this year. Augie, do you see him moving? And if so, where are some potential destinations for him?
Yeah, I see him moving. I think Reiss Nelson's got to kind of look around and think, I'm not going to get a game here. So it's a case of, that middle tier of the Premier League, I think he could do a good job there, but I don't think he's going to get a top 6 club. I think, again, I don't want to kind of keep referencing West Ham, but this is the sort of club that has got ambitions to go to a higher level. Has got a bit of money and resources, a bit of ambition that would attract players from the big 6 clubs. But whether Reiss Nelson would actually get into the West Ham team, I'm not sure. So mid-ranking Premier League clubs, a Fulham or a team like that, I think that's where his level is probably right now. I think it gives him the chance to kick on again. But I don't think he's got a future at Arsenal. I think Arsenal have moved on. I think that ship has sailed for Reiss Nelson.
He's 24, Shaka. What do you think of his prospects in his career? He's still young, but if he went and made that move now, could he find his? Does he have the talent to be playing at a top end Premier League club as he gets to the prime of his career?
He could, but he needs those minutes. It's not going to happen from at Arsenal. I think at 24 and having played as little as he has over the last couple of seasons, it's time for Reiss Nelson to move. I don't see the value of him staying at Arsenal. Even if Arsenal go on to win the title, I'm not sure what kind of professional reward there is in that. You want to advance your career. I think he needs to move. And I'm with Oggy in that he needs a move to somewhere. Not even necessarily mid-table. I think if you look near the bottom of the table, if you look at Leicester and Ipswich top of the championship, those are very likely destinations. I can't help but think of Solanke when I think of Reiss Nelson here. At Liverpool, not really doing an awful lot, gets a move and has now established himself as an asset in the Premier League. And if he decided to move, I think there'd be any number of clubs who would be interested. I see the same for Reiss Nelson. He does need to take that step back in the hope of taking 2 steps forward. May even be 2 steps back in the hope of taking 3 forward in the next few years.
Yeah, that's a great comp to Solanke. That would be a good model if he actually could pull that off for the course of his career. All right, that's in the near future. We got a transfer window just days away. Let's talk about the Champions League, which is now 2 months away. But yes, the draw came out this week. As we go through the different teams, we're going to kind of get a pick from each one of you guys on each tie. As you see the 8 ties starting in February. Porto, Arsenal. Is anybody on Porto here? What do we think? Let's start with you, Augie.
Well, I did my predictions yesterday, and I can't remember all of them, but I do remember that I do remember that I went for Porto, and people might be surprised at that. But listen, I do think if everything is equal, I think Arsenal will go through this tie. But Porto they're a good team. They're a good Champions League team. They've got a lot of experience. Good coaching, Sergio Conceição. Pepe scoring goals all the time. He's 40 years old and he's still scoring goals. But I think that the reason why I've gone for Porto in this is because they know their way around the Champions League, and Arsenal have got a great young squad, but they had a pretty soft group, and I don't think they've actually come up against a real kind of seasoned, hardened Champions League team, and Porto are that. And I think they came through a group with Barcelona, and I just think that Porto are the one team that could cause a real upset in this round, because nobody will tip Porto to beat Arsenal, but I do think that this could be a very close tie. Let's not forget, last season Arsenal in the Europa League lost to Sporting Lisbon. Portuguese teams often get underestimated in the Champions League in Europe, but they're always very good players and very good teams. A lot of players that are looking for moves to bigger leagues in Europe, so they're hungry sides as well. So I think Porto can win this time.
I mean, Augie, I'm biased. I'm an Arsenal supporter, so I hate that take. I'm just going to leave it at that. I've been waiting 6 years for this. You're going to come rain on my parade and tell me Porto's going to win? I'm staying with the Gunners. All right, what do you got, Shaq?
I will rain on your parade, Dalen. But I will disagree with Oggy in saying that. I don't think a pick for Porto raises that many eyebrows. I think, and I know we'll get to them, but for the bottom 3 on that list, I think the other 5 can quite easily go either way. But in terms of Porto, Arsenal, I'm leaning Arsenal, especially the second leg being back in London. I just feel that Arsenal will get the better of Porto, and sometimes Porto have these kind of inconsistent showings in the knockout stages of the Champions League, and I just feel Arsenal get the better of them this time around.
Interesting. Just looking at the odds right there. The odds makers are heavy on Arsenal just in the first leg going on into Portugal and winning. I don't know how I feel about that one. All right, champions of Spain versus champions of Italy last year. Napoli, Barca. Barca's had their issues throughout the course of this year, and they're in it right now. Augie, I'll start with you again. What do you like here?
I think it's a tie of the round. I think it's a tie of the round because it's so hard to call. It's the champions of Italy, the champions of Spain. Both have had a bit of a difficult defence of their title, but I'm going to go for Napoli in this one. I think Napoli, they've still got Osimhen, they've still got Kvaratskhelia. They're still this team that early last season were tearing teams apart. So Barca are a young team having difficulties in Spain right now. So I'm going to go for Napoli in this. I think it'll be a fantastic occasion in Naples. I just think that they've got that bit more experience, senior experience to win this tie.
Shaka?
I'm with Oggy here. I'm thinking Napoli. Listen, I know everything that Barcelona stands for, particularly in this competition. But having seen Barcelona of late, they do not look like the Barca we expect. I am in total agreement with Oggy. I think Napoli of the Italian clubs will have the best showing. They'll fly the flag for Serie A.
Okay. I mean, the odds makers right now have it basically as dead heat, plus 160 for both teams to win that first match, which is in Italy, and then a draw plus 250. I like you might have some value from the betting folks out there on the Italian team throughout this tie. Barcelona gets a lot of public money. All right, let's go to PSG and Real Sociedad. Sociedad struggling a little bit, is still in the Liga, but they've been excellent in their group stage in the Champions League against the French champs. Augie, where are you at?
I'm going for Real Sociedad in this tie. Very good defensively, very well organised. I've seen a bit of PSG, and I think PSG are the most overrated, overhyped club in the Champions League. And I think people are maybe thinking that this is the PSG of Neymar, of Cavani, of Di Maria, of Messi. And it's not. It's the PSG of Kylian Mbappe when he wants to try, and that isn't very often. You know, I just don't think PSG have got anything within themselves to get through this tie or even go further in the competition. I think they're a very limited team. They're a young team. They have got some good players, but I just think, you know, unless they kick on and find the way to step up from Ligue 1, which is a bit soft, to win this tie, I think Sociedad, unless Sociedad, you know, get themselves bogged down by nerves and tension and that lack of experience to play at this stage. But I think as it stands right now, I go for Sociedad.
Where are you at, Shaka?
Yeah, I'm torn about this one. I'll be honest. I'm leaning PSG just because of their experience in the competition and certainly this stage of the competition. But to your point, Dalen, I think Sociedad are a far better team than they were they sixth in La Liga. They are far better than that suggests. And I think if they get it right tactically, they certainly can get the better of PSG. PSG will give you chances. They are very soft defensively. If you could just keep them quiet in the attacking third, Colomboani and Mbappe, you saw in the group stage, are inconsistent. But on their day, we all know they're world beaters. So for the reason that I just think that PSG will be able to cope with this stage of the competition better than Sociedad, I'm leading PSG, but I have to admit, I really am torn.
Yeah, I like Sociedad here, and I do think from a value betting perspective that this could be a really good play as we see who's healthy and what's going on in the form when you get to February. But right now, as the numbers stand, PSG are massive favorites here. Inter and Atleti, this is another really interesting clash. Augie, let's roll through them a little bit quicker so we don't run out of time, guys. What do you got here?
Yeah, it's a tough one to call. I think, you know, I can't actually remember, so somebody's going to put me up with this. I think I went for Inter. I'm not sure. But the reason
I love you're convicted. I love your conviction right there. That's good.
This was the tie that
was yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. This was the tie that really. This is so close to call. I think this will go to penalties because you've got two, you know, experienced teams, two teams that probably tier 2 Champions League teams right now, but it really could. You know, they both got great attacking players. Griezmann on one side, you've got, you know, with all the goals they've scored in both competitions. So I think this could go either way. So I'll let Shaka kind of have the call on this one.
All right, I'll have it. I'll go Atletico Madrid. I just feel Atleti, and they have been a bit inconsistent, particularly of late. But I just feel Atleti are playing some football. Alvaro Morata has been, along with Griezmann, has been consistent up front. I think Atleti have been lacking that, and all of a sudden, as I say, Morata has found this incredible form. So I'm going to lean Atletico Madrid in this one.
I'm right there with you. Let's go to PSV and Dortmund. Dortmund, you mentioned inconsistent. They've been up and down in the Bundesliga, and then they win the league, win their group in the Champions League, which was supposed to be the hardest group, but didn't really all perform that well. PSV is flying right now in Holland in the Dutch league. Shaq, I'll stay with you this time. Where are you at there?
I'm thinking PSV here. I think while Dortmund has saved their best football for the Champions League, this is not a great Dortmund team. And you've seen those inconsistencies in Bundesliga. And yes, they did top what was deemed the group of death. But we've spoken about PSG's inconsistencies. Newcastle have been nursing a lengthy injury list. Seeing that, Dortmund, even before that, I thought made good work of Newcastle United. Mm-hmm. But PSV PSV lost heavily to Arsenal. What was it, the first or second game of the Champions League group stage? And they haven't lost since. Still 100% in Eredivisie. And I think coming into it with that confidence against a team in Dortmund who, again, while they've been good in Champions League, have been very inconsistent. And you wonder if that inconsistency comes back to plague them when things resume in February. So I'm going PSV here.
Augie?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go for Dortmund, and again, I don't think there's a lot between them. I think Shaka's right that Dortmund aren't a great side, and they did well to top their group. But PSV, I think it depends on who they lose in January. If they lose anybody, if they can keep this team together, I think they've got a chance of beating Dortmund because they are flying in the Dutch league, as you say. Very heavy, heavy US representation at PSV as well. So, but I just think that Dortmund's experience will take them through. But like I say, ask me again once the window's closed, and if PSV get the team together, I think PSV could do it.
Yeah, beware of Ricardo Pepi, Serginho Dest, and Malik Tillman. There you go. Let's go, Americans. And now these last three here, these are three, giants: Munich, Bayern, City, and Real Madrid. Do any one of you guys see them getting upset here?
No.
Okay.
Nor do I.
No. Okay.
No.
Let me just ask this then, because that with those three teams, I think they are the three favorites by in terms of the betting odds. Barcelona's mixed in here as well. The winner, Man City plus 200. Yeah, Munich at plus 400. Actually, Arsenal and Madrid tied at plus 550 right now. Who would you tip as the favorite right now, knowing they'll reshuffle everything in the quarterfinals? But when you look at particularly those three teams, would you say those are the favorites? And who do you tip as the favorite, Jack?
I have Manchester City as the favourites, and they aren't playing like it by any stretch. But I just feel that there's still time for them to turn things around. Kevin De Bruyne on his way back. Defensively, I think City quite clearly have issues, but those issues can be addressed. Those players don't become bad players overnight. I more think it's the way they play that is coming back to haunt them, which we may discuss again. So I see City. Saying that, of the other big boys, of all the big boys, I think Arsenal right now are playing the best football. My concern around Arsenal is just, and I know Augie's got them going out in the next. Well, today he has them going out. Today
exactly.
He has them going out in the next round. Who knows what happened yesterday? Who knows what he's going to say tomorrow? But today he has them going out against Porto. I just feel ultimately their lack of experience in the deeper stage of the Champions League comes back to haunt them. So right now I can't get away from looking at some of the usual suspects and City top of those.
Augie?
Yeah, I don't think Arsenal have got the nerve or the coach to win the Champions League, and that might surprise people. I don't think Mikel Arteta is ready to win the Champions League yet. I just think we saw last season the running, he kind of loses it a little bit, doesn't he? He kind of loses focus. So I'm going to say that Arsenal aren't going to win it because they're going to get knocked out by Porto, obviously. But in terms of the favourites, City are the favourites, but on any given day, Real or Bayern Munich could beat them. I don't think anybody else can. I think it's one of those three, and I'm going to say Real Madrid. I just think Real Madrid, when they get moving in the Champions League, they know what to do. They've got the best player in the world right now, in Jude Bellingham. If he stays fit, then I think nothing is beyond Real Madrid. So I'm going to go for Real but it could be any of those three.
Yeah, pretty good value for them. 5.5 times your money, and you've got, as you mentioned, Bellingham, who hasn't performed at that highest level yet, but that club has that institutional knowledge. Health is a big issue, though. Those guys do need to stay healthy, and we'll see what happens when we come to February. Let's wrap up our conversation with City. They are playing the Club World Cup right now in Saudi Arabia. They beat Uruguay yesterday 3-0. First time they've held a clean sheet in 9 matches. They move on to take the Brazilian and South American champs Fluminense in the final. Shaq, you kind of touched on this with City. Are you concerned about them, like long term? Like, and I guess what is this does this competition help them? Does winning and kind of if they keep a clean sheet again, or they did once, does that help them kind of get back on track as they fly, another 6 hours to come back and play, 4 days after they finish this next game?
I think this is a competition that ultimately can only hurt City in terms of. I think it's a title clearly they want to win, and Pep Guardiola has said as much. But it's one that you're expected to win. And if you don't, you ask more questions of yourself. Everybody else asks more questions about you. And there's this kind of unending breakdown of where it's all going wrong for City. Against Urawa, which is not easy for me to say, Urawa had two shots off target. in the semi. Listen, I'm well past my best, but I'm fairly confident that with 2 shots off target, I could keep a clean sheet. So I take absolutely nothing from that. My issue around City is I still think they have the personnel to be as good a team as we expect City to be every single season. I keep going back to that last Champions League game, or second to last, against Leipzig, where Openda scores 2 goals that were down to two defensive mistakes, Diaz and Akanji. And both of them, I thought that I couldn't help but both of them as defenders, it was about, let's play this total football. Never mind just fouling the striker, never mind just kicking the ball into the stand. Where's my next pass? And I feel that that's where City have gotten things wrong defensively. Sometimes it needs, you take a booking for the team. Sometimes it needs just kicking it into the stand, regrouping and dealing with that. And I don't think City have done that, and that's come back to cost them. So I say all that to say that these players are still very good defenders. I just wonder if that mentality has to adjust, and that's a simple adjust to come from Pep Guardiola, and they can get themselves back on track. Start keeping clean sheets, and I think they'll continue scoring the goals that we know that they can. And as I mentioned earlier, and with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, etc., coming back in the second half of the season, as he did last season, I think City will be even better.
Yeah, and we saw what they did the second half of last season, running off 36 straight points out of 12 straight wins, basically, 36 straight points. Are you in the same place, Augie, in terms of the assessment?
Yeah, and in terms of the Club World Cup, I think the tournament really needs a South American winner. I think if Fluminense win it, it'd be much better for the competition than if City win it. I think, and I watched some of the Red Diamonds game yesterday, and I thought the pitch was heavy, the quality was terrible. So it's not helping City in that respect. But it's a title that would be distinctive for them. I think only United, Chelsea, Liverpool have won it in English clubs, but it's not a great competition. It really isn't. I think for the stake of it, it needs Fluminense to win, but I don't think they will. I think the Fluminense would be a much more competitive game because, as we know, the South American teams are so desperate to win this that their motivation is much higher than City's, I think. But I think City could probably coast to the victory. But beyond that, would it help them? I think, the first game back in the Premier League is Everton away next Wednesday. So that is a tough re-entry to the Premier League, and I think it all depends on that. That will dictate how they do. If they come back and don't win at Everton, then they could be double digits behind Liverpool or Arsenal in the title race. So winning the Club World Cup won't mean anything. So it's a big weekend for City. They've had a bit of sunshine. They've had a bit of an easy game against Urawa. So we'll see. But I'd like Fluminense to win it for the sake of the competition. It has to be said.
Brazilian sides have beaten English sides before in this stage of the competition. So they're 2-2. But the last time that happened, Corinthians beat Chelsea back in 2012, 1-0, and then Sao Paulo beat Liverpool in 2005. So it's a little different, modern football the last 10 years in terms of the finances and players. A little different, but we'll see what happens. That game's on Friday. But you touched on something there, Augie, about motivation in this game. Let me ask you just from a City big picture perspective. And people say this all the time. They've gotten complacency. You win the treble. You've won 3 years in a row in terms of the Premier League. And Shaq, I'll start with you. Do you think that City was a victim of their own success a bit? Have they gotten complacent? Is that why they've struggled? Or has it been injuries and they're just not as good a team this year as they were toward the end of last year?
Yeah, I don't see it as complacency. And I know that's an easy out, but I just feel as a professional, there's a pride every time you step on the park. And I do not take that for granted. I think as a player, you go out to win every single game. And it doesn't matter the competition. It doesn't matter the stakes. You're there to win. I mean, losing is easier to accept, depending on any number of factors. But you're always trying to win it. So I don't see that as an issue. It's just one of those things. Ultimately, we're still all human, and while you see the exceptional side of City last season and exactly how good they can be, sometimes too many players are just kind of regress to being human all at the same time, and you see what was an incredible team 12 months ago look average by that standard, though not a lot else has changed. But to answer to your question, Dalen, I don't see that as being a complacency issue. That's just a human issue.
I like that you referenced that. It has like a Drago. It had like a Drago feel, like Rocky IV. Like they got cut earlier in the year, and you believe you can beat them, and now everybody's kind of jumping on board. Augie, do you think it's complacency, or do you think what you kind of assess how Shaka did?
Yeah, I don't see it as complacency. I think maybe a bit of mental fatigue. I think, to raise yourself to be at the absolute top level all the time, it's hard. People talk about too many games from a physical point of view, but I think it's more than that. I think it's psychological. It's just needing that break. It's really hard, to raise yourself every 4 days. And I think also as well this season, I think opponents have decided to take City on a little bit more. We've seen Chelsea do it, Tottenham, Liverpool, Arsenal. They've all had success against City in various forms. I think it's because they've decided that rather than sit back and wait to be beaten, they're going to have a go, and they've had some joy. So City finding games harder, physically and mentally. So it's all taking its toll. I think we're getting to that point now where they probably just need a bit of the look to change, because opponents are taking them on. They're finding it harder to cope with it. They're missing a few players through injury. So, all that coming together. But I think complacency, definitely not. I think that's the last thing that's an issue with City and Pep Guardiola.
Fellas, we're going to leave it there. Great talk as always. Enjoy the week. We got a couple games going on throughout the week, and the weekend, of course, stacked with fixtures after Christmas Day, on Boxing Day, and so forth. Thanks a lot for joining us here on ESPN FC YouTube Live. You can get us anytime, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday, or ESPN FC TV every day, 6 o'clock Eastern Time. See you guys.